Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Muslim Sex Podcast. I have some exciting news. I want to let all of you know that I am opening up my office, my private office, where I can see you here in New York, and it will be opening at the end of this month. So this month is now June. So at the end of this month, my office will be up and running, and I would love for you to come in and see me as a patient. So go to V Health. So that is FEMMEVIEHEALTH.com and sign up to be a member of my concierge gynecology practice. And you can also come to see me for regular visits, or if you have a problem visit, come and see me. I, of course, focus on menopause and sexual health. So if you're having any of those issues, I'd love to see you. And make sure you come in and say hi. I'd love to meet you in person. So also, the retreat is still going on. It'll be happening September 16th through the 23rd, and we only have a few spots left. So if you were thinking about coming to the retreat where we focus on nutrition and sexual health and menopausal health, you need to register today because spots are filling up. And once it's sold out, it will be sold out and we will not be taking any more participants. So make sure you go and register for that as well. Also, as always, please remember to like and share this podcast. Leave me a 5-star review so that it shows up and so that we can get the word out about menopausal and sexual health, as well as intimacy and intimacy coaching. So if you love this podcast, please make sure to leave me a 5-star review. And now on to the episode. I am an American board certified OBGYN, a mom, a Muslim, and I'm talking about sex. This is the Muslim Sex Podcast. Welcome to the Muslim Sex Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sadaf, and this episode is a continuation of the last 2 podcasts, and hopefully you took a listen to them. You're finding some value in them. There are some really great pearls in there. So I would definitely, if you have always been wondering about like intimacy coaching and kind of what that is, take a listen. Tell me what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And really, it's all about, what we can do in terms of reigniting that relationship, that spark in our relationship. What was it that really drew you to your partner in the beginning? And then how can you foster that? How can you keep that mystery, that newness that you loved, right? In the beginning, that resulted in that spontaneous desire that we talked about. How can you do that? And, I talk about really different things that you can do that are super easy, that don't require any money, just require time, and time from you, time to give to your patients. So really important stuff there. So before I get into it, of course, as always, this is not medical advice. And in this, you won't be getting medical advice anyways. And definitely, if you're having questions about your religion, please speak with your friendly neighborhood religious leader. This is a Muslim Sex Podcast because I just happen to be a Muslim woman that talks about sex. So I'm going to continue just talking about, this is really the last episode for how to rekindle that spark in your relationship. So like I said before, if you haven't listened to the other 2, I would really ask you to take a listen to the other 2 because this just kind of builds on the other ones. And I think you'll find a lot of value in it. And I hope you find a lot of value in it because lots of easy things that you can do to foster that emotional intimacy and connection in your relationship. So let's get into it. So really reigniting that passion and reviving those desires that, in a relationship, it can be an exciting journey. And I, would really ask for you to think of it in that way, right? Don't think of it as a chore. Chores are like boring and they're like, oh man, I gotta like take out the trash and stuff like that. I don't want you to think about building your relationship as like take the same thing as, taking out the trash, because that would really stink. Figuratively, and I guess no pun intended, but it does sting. Anyways, so, what I want you to do is really to change those thoughts that you may be having about rekindling that relationship. And if it's something that you really want to do, right? If this relationship is really important to you, then maybe there are some quick and easy ways that you can do that that would lead to that rekindling that spark. So, again, it begins a lot with just self care and nurturing your own needs. But let's talk about some strategies that you can use to reignite that spark in both within you and also in your relationships. So, self care and really discovering your own desires. So, what I want you to do is really to focus on activities that bring you joy, right? What are the things that you love to do? What are the things that you would love to share with your partner, right? So, what are things that to boost your self confidence and help you to reconnect with you and your sensuality? Those are important things. Take time to understand what ignites your desire and brings that energy back into your relationship. Really engage in perhaps some self exploration to rediscover your desires and communicate them with your partner. Really take time out, I think. Sometimes it's just nice to just be by yourself, right? I think that you can come up with a lot of great ideas, learning to like being by yourself. I don't think that, people always have to be with others. I think community is fantastic. I love community. I love being in community. I love, hanging out with friends and stuff like that. But I think it's really important to also make time to connect with yourself, with your own thoughts, and to remember who you are as a person, right? Do things that kind of make you come alive and things that are important to you. I think also embracing novelty and variety. We know, right, that variety is the spice of life, right? When we start doing the same thing over and over again, then these just become monotonous and boring, right? And then we go and we seek out things that are different, things that are exciting. And I think that what about just creating that excitement in your own relationship, right? Doing things that are a little bit different, exploring new experiences, try something different, try different settings, maybe go for a walk in like a different park or something like that, or explore a town that you've never explored before, right? All of those things are exciting and new and can be really important and exciting. Engaging in sensual activities together, right? Things that maybe you wanted to always try but never did. So, talking about your desires and your wants are super important to be open with your partner and be vulnerable, right? Discussing your fantasies, your desires with your partner, creating a safe and non-judgmental space. I think what happens sometimes is that, one partner may be discussing what their fantasies and their desires are, and then the other partner is like, oh wow, really? You want to do that? And I think that automatically is puts a downer on that relationship, not a relationship, but just even the other person opening up so that maybe they may not open up again because they think like, well, I did it one time and that person or my partner didn't really like it, or they made me feel uncomfortable, and so now I'm not going to do it again because if that's going to be their reaction, then they're not going to. So I think just trying to be open with your partner and discussing what you really want, I think is really important. And creating that safe and non-judgmental space, I think is super important. We know, and we talked a little bit about the power of touch and emotional intimacy, right? So just the simple acts of touch, of hugging, kissing, cuddling, massage, all of those things can boost oxytocin, which is a hormone. So we know in OBGYN, we use oxytocin all the time. Actually, oxytocin is something called Pitocin. We use that for contractions to help induce labor. But oxytocin actually is a hormone that is released from the brain, from the pituitary. And it's a natural hormone actually, that is associated with bonding and well-being. So that is the hormone. So it's so interesting, right? When you think about this. So oxytocin is the hormone that allows the milk to come into the breast when a woman delivers. Okay. Now, I want you to think about that and think about how this is a hormone for bonding and well being, but it's also the hormone that allows that milk to come into the breast, right? So it makes so much sense that that bonding that occurs between the mother and the baby when she is nursing is the same hormone that allows that milk to come in the breast. It just makes so much sense. And that is also the hormone that is associated with bonding and well-being. So that's also the hormone that's released when we give each other hugs, when we're cuddling and things like that, right? So it's creating that bond, that well-being. So, prioritizing physical affection is really important in rekindling romance in your relationship and building that emotional intimacy. Remember that, of course, physical intimacy doesn't always have to lead to sex, and we know that. And I think that that is really important to remember, especially if you're in that relationship where you have somebody with a high libido and somebody with a low libido, to know that you can just have affection for the sake of affection, and to let that other person know that you care about them, you love them, without it always having to lead to sex, right? Because it can be meaningful and pleasurable just by itself. Make sure to increase intimacy through communication. So effective communication is a key factor in sexual satisfaction and intimacy. And when you communicate your likes, your wants, your desires, your dislikes to your partner, it can establish that trust and emotional connection by sharing your innermost feelings and thoughts. And I think that that is really, really important for, allowing yourself to be vulnerable with your partner and creating that intimacy that we want. You have to always make time for open and honest discussions about your sexual desires and preferences. And make sure you discuss boundaries, right? Like, some people are not comfortable with X, Y, and Z. So, you have to be able to talk about it with your partner. Let them know what you want, what you don't want, and I think what you don't want is just as important as what you want. Showing appreciation, prioritizing your time together, right? So just like even small gestures of appreciation, such as making breakfast or making dinner, or maybe getting dinner, right? You don't always have to make it, or just buying some flowers, or maybe even a text throughout the day, like, hey, just thinking about you and whatever, just wondering how you're doing. Something simple, right? Any of those things can foster intimacy and emotional connection. Making time, creating time, and prioritizing each other in your schedule, right? That's what I talked about before, is just even creating those date nights, but also about, even if you can't have date nights, right? You don't have to have date nights every night, right? So you create a date night, and maybe that's once a week. But then how about putting time in your calendar for your partner at the end of the day, right? When you're not super exhausted. Sometimes we wait until the very last, like, 5 minutes before we go to bed for our partner. And then, we're just so exhausted that we just don't even want to talk. We just want to go to bed. So I think that maybe creating that time every day, but such that it's not at the end of the day, maybe during the day, so that you're not too exhausted to have a conversation with them, right? Engaging in activities and interests that you both enjoy. Sometimes, they have those at some of the locations. I think you can go and create meals together, right? So I think that a lot of places have where you can learn to cook together, which I always find I love doing, because I think that, at the end of it, you get to eat a meal, which is fantastic, because who doesn't like eating? But I think that, doing something like that together is fantastic, because you learn a lot about your partner that way as well. And you can share an experience and strengthen really that bond between you and your partner. So, what are some thoughts, right, that can help increase intimacy in your relationship? What are some power thoughts that I can leave you with, and or some things that you can just do, right? So not necessarily even thoughts, but just some things, easy things that you can do. And I think I've really spoken about a lot of them, but there are, I would say, let's see here, one, two, three, four, five, let's say 5 things. Okay, so let's say 5 things that you can do really today, if you wanted to increase that spark in your relationship. And they're super easy. I've mentioned them before, but I'm just going to kind of put them together. And then you can talk about, and you can think about it and see what you like, and choose and pick and whatever you want to do. But I think that these are some easy things. So, number one, practice mindfulness, which can, increase pleasure and arousal and lubrication, libido, and all of that in your relationship, right? So just focusing on the present moment instead of worrying about the future, it really helps. You can also reduce stress that way and fully engage in your intimate experiences, right? So practicing mindfulness. I really would stress that. And so I would say that as like number one. Number two, embrace self acceptance and love yourself. I think a lot of times what happens is that, and actually, this is going to be my next episode that I'm going to talk about the importance of having like a positive self image. I think what happens is that sometimes people think like, oh, I'll love myself once I lose that 10 pounds. Maybe I'll love myself more after I get the haircut. Maybe I'll love myself more if I, why are we waiting? Right? Like, I don't understand. Why do we need to wait? Why do we need to wait until that perfect time? There's never going to be a perfect time to love yourself. Love yourself now. Love yourself the way that you are. Love yourself who you are right now. Because nobody has any guarantees of like tomorrow or the day after, whatever, right? You don't want to be telling yourself that, I don't love myself now, but one day I will once I achieve X, Y, and Z. Who cares? Love yourself now. I think that's really so important, right? No need to wait. Letting go of self expectations and just really being kind to yourself. I think oftentimes it's easier for us to be kind to others, but when it comes time to being kind to ourselves, I think we are really hard on ourselves. So I think just giving yourself grace and learning that you're doing, saying that you're doing the best that you can with the information you have right now, um, is really just showing kindness to yourself. And I think that's really important. So that was number two. Number three, and also, okay, so along with that, showing to yourself self kindness. Remember I talked about recognizing that love and intimacy changes and evolves as we age, right? Everything has to evolve. Everything has to change. We're not the same. We're not the same person we were yesterday. So even our relationships evolve and even we change. So I think that that is really, really important and really important to understand. And just really embrace the beauty of the stage that you're in right now, right? I mean, what is the other option? There's no other option. We are all going to get older. So own it, love yourself as you are right now. I think that is really important. So what was that? Two. So number three, prioritize communication. So honestly, lots of studies have been done on this. And they say that what is the one thing that will tell you whether or not, or, what they noted in a relationship, the one thing that decided whether or not a person, specifically women in this case, were satisfied with their sexual relationship, right? What was the one thing, one factor that led to the greatest satisfaction in their relationship? Do you know what that was? It was communication. Communication. You can't really over communicate. Maybe you can, but communication is really so important to have with your partner, right? Because if you're not communicating, then what are you doing? You're not talking to each other. If you're not talking to each other, then that's really going to lead to a breakdown in your relationship. And by writing down what your desires are and openly discussing them with your partner, right, is so important because then they know what it is that you know what they want, and it just leads to just a better relationship. Clear communication also sets the foundation for satisfying and intimate connection. Okay, so that's number three, right? Number four, make time for sex and prioritize intimate moments. I think that that is really, really important. It's really that physical connection. I think that's so important. So just make time for that, prioritize it. It's important. It's as important as, say, exercise is for your health, right? We know that sexual health is a part of a person's overall health. So why not prioritize that, right? Create a sacred space for connection, whether it's through scheduled date nights or simply carving out time for each other in your daily lives. I think that that's really important. And number five, increase intimacy through different activities, right? Throughout your daily lives. So maybe hold hands more, engage in shared hobbies, participate in new experiences together. All of these things will foster a closeness and deepen your emotional and physical connection, right? So I've just given you five things, super easy, that you can do. And maybe they're not easy. Maybe it requires time. Maybe, you'll need a little bit of time to get used to it, whatever. But whatever the case may be, is just incorporating these little things, right? They don't require money, they just require your time and a little bit of your energy to, because if something is this important to you, right? Because if you're listening to this podcast, you're maybe curious as to how you can rekindle that spark in your relationship. So even that shows that you're interested in fostering perhaps a new, I don't know, love, or perhaps, a new light in your relationship. Maybe that spark that, had died, now you want to rekindle it again. And you're looking for ways to do that, right? And you're listening to the podcast because you're interested in that. And now I've given you 5 easy things that you can do. So let me just go over them really quick again. Practicing mindfulness, right? Embracing self acceptance and loving yourself for who you are right now. Prioritizing communication, making time for sex, and prioritizing intimate moments, and increasing intimacy throughout various activities, right? So, 5 things that you can do that you can start today if you wanted. Embracing self care, open communication, and prioritizing your intimate moments really can reignite the passion and revive the desires in your relationship and create really a fulfilling and pleasurable intimate connection with your relationship. Now, we know that it's really important that when you start to have issues in your relationship, and the key to address them is to speak openly and acknowledge that they exist, but that there are tools that you can use to help overcome hurdles. And by understanding that there is definitely a connection between you and your partner, right? Through improved communication, you can reconnect with your desires, and you can work together with your partner to navigate any challenges that arise. And I think that that's really important to know, right? So, as I discussed before, communication is so important. So, really try to keep that open communication with your partner. It's important to also know that how we feel about ourselves, the thoughts that we think, really have an impact on the actions that we take. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in my next episode. But I think that that's really important to understand, is the impact that our thoughts play on our relationships, right? So just kind of think about that for a little bit. And as you navigate your journey together with your partner, it's important to, again, prioritize that communication, give each other the respect that you deserve, and be willing to understand and meet each other's needs. And I think by doing so, you can reignite that passion in your relationship that you so desire, and create a fulfilling and pleasurable connection with you, yourself, and also with your partner. So I think that those are really important things. Lastly, what I want to say, and I didn't say at the end of my other 2 episodes, is that really I'm here to help you. So if you are finding that you really want to create that intimacy in your relationship, and you're wondering how you can do it, we can get together, you can make a call, schedule an appointment with me, and see how we can work together to foster and reignite that spark in your relationship, because it is an important relationship. And you want to make sure you don't neglect it. And if your relationship has fallen into like a sexless marriage, right, what's happening with that? Are you thinking that you may end the relationship? How much is it going to cost you to end a relationship that you could have fixed, right? What if your relationship didn't need to be like that, right? What if you could get the relationship that you want? What is it costing you to keep your relationship as is and not improve it? These are some questions that I want you to think about, because sometimes people say like, oh, it's too expensive to get help, or it's too expensive to really invest in my relationship. But then I would counter that by saying, how expensive is it to be in a relationship year after year that you don't enjoy, right? To feel like you're stuck in your relationship. How expensive is it to feel like you're wasting your life away, the better parts of your years, if you're not happy? If you feel like there's something you could have done, but you didn't do because you're worried about the cost, but really it was costing you more in your health and in your relationship. And really, what if that relationship could have been saved, but is not being saved? So just some food for thought for you to think about, and know that, there are lots of resources out there. And I'm definitely a resource that you can reach out to and contact for one-on-one appointment and a consultation. So, well, it has been real and really intimate. And until next time, this is the Muslim Sex Podcast. So, thank you for listening to the podcast, and make sure you leave us a review, share and like the podcast. And if you leave me a review, I'd love to shout you out on social media. So be sure that you share it with all your friends. And thanks for listening.